Hey, what's up, y'all? How y'all doing? I hope everybody out there is doing well, right? Check this out. Now, I want to say welcome back to the ambassador of France Lamont, and welcome to my hoodie edition. So we're gonna jump into this topic, right? And this topic is, as you see, is called the Black KKK. But before we go into the Black KKK, let's talk about the old KKK.
The Klu Klux Klan.
The Klan March may have been cut short, but apparently it helped membership.
Other than the Coke bottle, what's more recognizable than the white hood and robe and the flaming cross?
The government was intended to be of the white man, by the white man, and for the white man.
Mongrel class of people.
Interest in the Ku Klux Klan has swelled and then dwindled. The Klan's power always came and went in phases. Until at one point, the tactics used to gather Klan members together ultimately become the hooks used to drag them down.
The oldest Ku Klux Klan organization in the nation may be out of business.
But what's never gone away is the fear the Klan built its legacy on.
Preserve the racist.
Fear that's still here today.
They call themselves white patriots, knights of the Klan, and they have returned to the small Tennessee town where it all began.
This is Pulaski, Tennessee, and the Ku Klux Klan began back in 1865 on Christmas Eve, when 6 ex-Confederate soldiers met to form a social club. Its name was inspired by the Greek word for circle. Nathan Bedford Forrest was the Klan's first imperial wizard, and the hoods and robes were used to frighten black people in their homes. But then black people start voting, and the Klan and groups like it turn brutal. But the Klan went quiet just years later.
By 1872, all of their goals had been pretty much accomplished, so there wasn't really a need to don a sheet anymore. Because you had your person, your guy at the State House who could make laws that would suit your purposes.
In 1915, Birth of a Nation became the first film ever screened at the White House. The book it was based on was written by a friend of then-President Woodrow Wilson.
You know, it's a 3-hour film that poses black men as dangerous and violent, so which led to, a decade of racial terror lynchings. And we see that narrative continues to this very day.
The film inspired another war veteran, William J. Simmons, who began to reignite the flames of the Klan, this time against not just blacks, but Catholics, Jewish people, and the nation's newly arriving immigrants.
People are shocked to know that there were, 1 million people in the Ku Klux Klan around the country.
The Klu Klux Klan spread its poisonous influence.
But you had a lot of people, a lot of officials. You had governors, you had senators.
But by the 1930s, the Klan's millions had dwindled to thousands. Here's why.
As the New Jersey Ku Klux Klan rents the camp for one day, cameramen are not permitted to photograph everything.
While the Klan had a national organization, there were copycat groups who fought over funds, dragging each other into court and adding to the growing disgust of the public. The IRS investigated in 1944 and then demanded $500,000 in back taxes. That crippled the Klan, but not for long.
With the advent of the Civil Rights Movement and the Supreme Court order to desegregate in 1954, the Ku Klux Klan sprang back to life.
Robert Shelton's United Klans of America assaulted freedom riders and activists from Birmingham to Anniston. The White Knights of Mississippi were responsible for the murder of 3 civil rights workers. The Klan is responsible for the 1963 Baptist church bombing and the 1965 murder of mother of 5 Viola Liuzzo. The FBI infiltrated and cracked down on the violence, but violence wasn't the only issue.
You also have those nonviolent actions that were carried out by groups like the White Citizens Council. After Brown v. Board in places like Montgomery, Alabama, where I am, they immediately started these private academies, and to this day, they don't send their kids to school with black kids.
I believe in nonviolence. I think that we should react and we should work and organize as white people.
David Duke tried to popularize a new type of Klansman. He tried to claim they were nonviolent. They were simply all about white people's rights. And he was photogenic, and he got a lot of publicity, and his Klan group started growing.
And then comes leaders like Bill Wilkinson and Fraser Glenn Miller Jr. The numbers were smaller than before, but the violence still left people dead. To investigate and go after the Klan, Klan Watch director Randall Williams attended several rallies.
There is an odd, happy white supremacy family atmosphere to some of this activity. You know, if you go to a Klan rally on a Saturday afternoon, they're having a fish fry. I mean, it almost looks benign.
But the KKK's symbols made their members a solid target. And memberships, reams of propaganda material, assets, and bank accounts became liabilities that groups like the SPLC could use to take the Klan down in court. In 1987, Beulah May Donald won a $7 million lawsuit against the United Klans of America for their involvement in the death of her 19-year-old son.
No, I didn't want it to happen to nobody else's child like it has mine.
It bankrupted the largest Klan organization at the time, but the people who'd been attracted to KKK principles had already started to move on.
Beginning in the late 1970s, what we really see is that this sense of emergency shared by white power activists, and here I'm talking about Klansmen, but also radical tax resistors, white separatists, followers of Christian identity, neo-Nazis, and a whole bunch of other people. That sense of emergency and the sense of a shared frustration with the government brought people together in what they called the white power movement.
White power! The KKK's robes and crosses are less popular now, but the tactics the Klan used to draw individuals in proved useful for decades. One key lesson: the Klan figured out how to use the internet back in the early 80s with Liberty Net. The new white power groups now know how to communicate without making themselves easy targets.
We have to remember that these activists are motivated by a sense that their actions are all that stands between them, their families, and the end of the world.
The Caucasian KKK came around the end of slavery, which was around 1865, right? And they basically was a group that terrorized the newly freed slaves. They didn't want them to, feel comfortable with their freedom, and they didn't want them to progress or get better in life, right? So they decided that they were going to oppress these people and repress these people, murder these people, basically terrorize these people, right? Now, if we want to get that back to how that began, it was basically a bunch of old Confederate soldiers and racist white men, I guess, that formed vigilante groups that went out and terrorized the blacks during slavery, or they went hunted runaway slaves, and that type of stuff. And then you had the rich white folks, or rich Caucasians actually, who formed police clubs or agriculture clubs to basically do the same thing the vigilante groups were doing, and that is to basically control the newly freed black population. But of course, those type of things and that type of behavior and that type of control gets out of hand, and so the KKK was quickly formed. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, they are the original terrorist group of America, okay? And it was just basically done to oppress the black folks, to keep them at a certain level. So that's what we're dealing with, right? That's the old KKK. So, and they did a lot of things that we just have to talk about. I mean, it was horrible at the time for black.
Greenwood, Oklahoma, 1921. The north side of Tulsa was a prosperous community, exclusively black, because Jim Crow laws prohibited Negroes from living in white neighborhoods, where it was said more than 3,000 Klu Klux Klan members resided in the area. At that time, there were countless all-black communities, like Greenwood, scattered throughout the U.S., 60 in Oklahoma Territory alone. Greenwood, however, was the jewel of Negro America. Though white Tulsans called it Middle Africa, Booker T. Washington gave it the name we know it as today, Black Wall Street. And it was the wealthiest black community in America, where black men and women came to pursue the American dream. It boasted black-owned banks, pharmacies, grocery stores, movie theaters, restaurants, churches, newspaper publishing, law offices, a bus company, its own school district, where the average student wore a uniform with a suit and tie, a business college, a hospital with an entire black staff, and an internationally acclaimed surgeon. Black millionaires, which Greenwood was known to have had more millionaires residing there than the entire United States combined. And of the only 2 airports in the state of Oklahoma, one of them was for the half-dozen private airplanes owned by its black oil tycoons. To top it off, the minimum wage and living standard of a resident of Black Wall Street far exceeded that of the average white citizen of Tulsa. But on May 30th, 1921, all that changed. Dick Rowland, a shoeshine boy, entered the elevator in the Drexel building to use one of the only few colored bathrooms in downtown Tulsa. On the top floor, Sarah Page, a 17-year-old, a white elevator operator, began operating the elevator when it lurched, causing Rowland to stumble. He bumped into Sarah, and she screamed. Rowland, knowing what Frederick Douglass had penned as the truth with regards to the treatment of black men in America, to be accused was to be convicted, and to be convicted was to be punished. In this case, punishment, when it came to the accusations of a white woman, meant death, and knowing her scream was a likely death sentence, young Rowland ran away. He was later seized and apprehended with the intent of being lynched. Word of a black man raping a defenseless white girl spread throughout the Tulsa area. Dozens and then hundreds, until a mob of over 2,000 white men gathered at the county courthouse demanding justice. But justice for what? Sarah Page wasn't assaulted. Her clothes weren't ruffled. And though her story wavered during questioning, she ultimately affirmed she was not harmed. Moreover, she refused to sign a statement saying that she had been raped. But don't let the facts get in the way of a false accusation of a black man who needed to be put in his place at the end of a rope. The Tulsa Tribune reported,
"A Negro assaults a white girl.
And later,
To lynch Negro tonight."
with no basis in fact for the allegations of rape, the mob persisted in their demand for justice of a white girl who emphatically stated that no injustice had been done. Walter White of the New York Evening Post wrote,
Chief of Police John A. Gustafson, Sheriff McCullough, Mayor T.D. Evans, and a number of reputable citizens, among them prominent oil operator, all declared the girl had not been molested, that no attempt at criminal assault had been made. Victor F. Barnett, managing editor of the Tribune, stated that his paper had since learned that the original story that the girl's face was scratched and her clothes torn was untrue.
And there you have it. Fake news. But the damage had already been done, and the wheels were set in motion. Armed black World War I veterans were among the less than 100 members of the Greenwood community who came to prevent another lynching of a black man, as thousands had been lynched since the generation of Reconstruction. A verbal confrontation led to a shot being fired, triggering what would soon become the most bloody racial conflict in American history. Some 500 members of the white mob were armed and deputized by city officials, and those who didn't own weapons looted stores to obtain guns and ammunition along the way. Thousands of angry white men descended upon Little Africa, as a few white families provided sanctuary to those fleeing from violence. Over the course of 24 hours, the mob looted, murdered, and razed the wealthiest black city in America to the ground. Eyewitness testimony stated a dozen or more planes circled the black area, dropping burning turpentine balls over the city of Greenwood, and firing bullets at black residents young and old, gunning them down in the streets. It was the first and only time Americans used planes to attack and kill its own citizens, as it destroyed an entire city. Authorities engaged in a concerted effort to prevent help from arriving until considerable damage was done, by cutting off communication requesting help, blocking transportation ways of firefighters and ambulances, and even preventing the Red Cross from coming in earlier to help the injured and terrorized community.
As they passed the city's most traveled street, they held both hands high above their heads, their hats in one hand as a token of their submission to the white man's authority. They will not return to the homes they had on Tuesday afternoon, only the heaps of ashes, the angry white man's reprisal for the wrong inflicted on them by the inferior race. Tulsa Tribune.
Following the massacre, insurance companies refused to compensate the residents, though the city and its officials were found negligent in preventing it. Decades of silence about the terror, violence, and theft passed. There were no convictions for any of the charges related to the murders or violence. Not one white person was ever held responsible for these crimes, though dozens of black men were indicted for inciting a riot. Government and city officials not only failed to invest and rebuild the once thriving Greenwood community, but blocked efforts to do so, and even actively sought to appropriate their land. The crime wasn't acknowledged by the city or the state of Oklahoma for over 70 years, rarely mentioning it in history books, classrooms, or even in private. Most residents grew into middle age, completely unaware of what had taken place. Even a report detailing the history of Tulsa's fire department from 1897 to 2017 made no mention of the massacre. And on that Memorial Day weekend, June 1st, 1921, Greenwood, Oklahoma, was brought to an abrupt end. Black Wall Street was wiped off the map. 300 African Americans murdered, possibly more. Thousands injured. More than 10,000 left homeless. 40 city blocks burned to the ground. And and the few homes left were completely looted. The Tulsa Real Estate Exchange estimated property losses amounting to the equivalent of more than $32 million in today's money. Unbeknownst to most, Tulsa's Black Wall Street wasn't the only black town to be ethnically cleansed in America. It wasn't the only city forgotten, nor was it the only black town where no one was ever arrested, prosecuted, or where victims were never compensated. Time has passed, memories have faded, and survivors have died, taking the knowledge of not only how the cities were destroyed, but arguably even more tragic, the knowledge of how these countless all-black towns were built.
Right? So this is where we get a lot of the stuff that we need to talk about when it comes to the crime, to the horrors, and the treatment of blacks, and the destruction of the blacks, the destruction of them morally, spiritually, mentally, physically, financially. All of this was just part of the KKK's plan to terrorize the newly freed slaves. Now, after that freedom, we had some things happen, right? Although they were created to terrorize the newly freed slaves, the slaves bonded together and they started figuring out how to overcome this thing and still be progressive. So they kind of stuck together and worked together.
Fall away. Thank you for the bounty of our lives and the blessings you bestowed on us in home and family.
In 1923, the black town of Rosewood was a land of opportunity.
You've been drifting along, Mr. Man.
Seemed like forever.
Colored folks own all the land around here, all the businesses too. Man can make a new start around here, make something of himself.
Until the day, one woman's false accusation.
Tell me the truth. Was it truly a colored done this to you?
Unleashed a fury against their town.
If you find him, well, you know what to do.
There'd be some trouble around here, sir. To show use your help.
There ain't no way in the world one man got enough bullets for all them crackers.
And a search for the guilty became a hunt for the innocent.
These are real folks dying. Women and children ain't done nothing wrong to no soul.
Now, colored folk just can't be running all the time. There comes a time when you got to stand up and defend your rights.
We're gonna make it. Trust me.
Warner Brothers presents, from director John Singleton and producer John Peters, the extraordinary story of how one town faced fear with courage, fought hate with dignity, and risked their lives to defend their home. John Voight, Ving Rhames, Michael Rooker, Esther Roll, Don Cheadle.
We need to pray. Now, dear Lord.
I ain't no praying move, preacher.
Now, I was born and raised in Rosewood. This here's my home, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna let anybody run me off it.
There was no welfare system. There was no any type of government helps for newly freed slaves. So they had to do it on their own. And so eventually, like I said, they started building things and changing things and getting things better for themselves. They built a black economy. Now, one thing I would say that was kind of messed up is, we're talking about we're talking about I felt like they shouldn't have been so close to Caucasians building businesses, But of course, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was not much choice, but they had their part. Eventually, it got burned down out of jealousy and anger and prejudice and racism, right? And it kicked off because of a false accusation. Just same thing with Emmett Till, false accusation by a Caucasian lady.
Message.
It kicked off. Same thing happened in Rosewood, Florida. False accusation by a Caucasian lady.
Message.
All these lives was killed and all this stuff was damaged and destroyed. But purpose of this video is to show you that we did have the KKK, and they're still around. They're just on the ground. They'll be back. Don't worry about that. They're coming back for the race war when the lawlessness falls upon America. And then you'll see, racism jump up about 25 to 30% because it was only pushed underground because of laws, and laws can't. A law can't, outlaw hate. A law can't change your heart. A law can't make you want to treat somebody better with a different skin color, So it's going to come back. But truth be told, we're dealing with a new KKK.
In the first 2 years of the 2020 decade, we have seen 15 hip-hop artists die by homicide. In a study conducted by Diana Kenny, a professor of psychology at the University of Sydney, she examined the deaths of more than 13,000 musicians across different genres and looked for any patterns. What she found was downright astonishing. Okay, so what the study found was that homicides accounted for only 6% of deaths among all genres in music, but when you look specifically at the genre of hip-hop and rap, the study found that it accounted for 51% of deaths in hip-hop. The closest genre to hip-hop and homicides is electronic music, accounting for 10% of deaths. Now, the study was conducted in 2015, which means these numbers are likely to be far higher in 2022. And when looking at the following chart, you can see the life expectancy of rap and hip-hop artists ranks the lowest among all other genres. Now, why is that? In this video, we're going to look at why rappers are being killed at such a high rate compared to the past, and what are some of the root causes of homicides in hip-hop. Now, I'm not telling you to agree with me. I'm just telling you to peep the perspective. When the late great Tupac was murdered in 1996, followed by the retaliation murder of Notorious B.I.G. in 1997, it not only left the hip-hop community traumatized and in utter shock, but it was also a learning experience that cooled down the violence in hip-hop in the forthcoming years. Don't get me wrong, we still saw up-and-coming established hip-hop artists getting killed, from Big L in 1999 and Jam Master Jay in 2001, but the frequency in which these rappers were murdered was relatively low in the 90s and early 2000s. You don't believe me? Let's look at the numbers. Okay, so as you can see, the 90s and early 2000s saw about one artist being killed every year, with 10 homicides in the decade of the 90s and 12 homicides in the decade of the early 2000s. The next decade between 2010 and 2019 saw homicides almost double from 12 homicides the previous decade to 21 homicides in the next. Now, just 2 years into the 2020 decade, we have already seen a staggering 15 homicides. Now the question is, what was the cause of such a steep rise in homicides between the early 2000s and the 2010 decade? Now, before I go into some of the underlying causes of the drastic increase in homicides in hip-hop, it must not be overlooked that violence in hip-hop is due in part to many hip-hop artists coming from impoverished, under-resourced, and dangerous urban communities, which is a catalyst for crime and violence. Hip-hop is a reflection of what communities in America are facing right now.
So our brother dying and all the rappers dying have been a direct reflection of what's happening in our community. Because our rappers dying are public and discussed on a national stage, but our brothers and sisters in the community who are being shot, killed, and being treated, abused by our own brothers and sisters in such a horrific way.
What Russell said was true, but when you look at the numbers and the time frame in which the rate of homicides have increased from the early 2000s to the 2010s, you can find correlations with crucial external factors that have led to homicides doubling in the matter of 1 decade. For instance, the 2010s was the decade of the social media era that saw a sweeping change in technology which made it easier for your average Joe to produce content and release it to the masses. Now, they did this via social media outlets like YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You no longer needed to go to New York or Los Angeles to make it big in the rap world. And you didn't need $1 million budget music video either. You could shoot a music video in your grandmother's house like Chicago drill rapper Chief Keef in 2012 and become the biggest rapper in America. Okay, so this is where my theory, which I have coined the homeboy effect, comes in. The concept of the homeboy effect is that technology has simply made it easier to create content and produce it to the masses without needing a major label backing. This essentially means that your homie, who is a gangbanger and really about that life, can now record a song in his basement in 30 minutes and record a music video using his smartphone and uploading it to YouTube. Forget your label booking you a studio session, forget Hype Williams directing $1 million music video. In the 2010s, all you needed was a smartphone, an Instagram, and a little clout. And that's the problem. Hip-hop artists are now using social media as a catalyst for violence, from threats on Instagram Live and YouTube to actual violent crimes being committed on social media. The advancement in technology in the 2010s has come with clear negative consequences in hip-hop culture. Hip-hop was now officially in the fast food era of rap. Every month a new gangster rapper would go viral, then go to jail or get murdered. In some cases, social media has directly caused the death of hip-hop artists by disclosing information such as location. The sad reality is hip-hop is being used as a vessel for violence, as anyone and everyone can create music and release it to the general public. Another crucial aspect that needs to be addressed with regards to the high rate of homicides in hip-hop, and something that I believe is the elephant in the room, is the lack of professional security most rappers have. With the climate of hip-hop right now, if you consider yourself a professional rapper and you promote gangster music and culture, professional security should be on your expenses list the same way that the mansion is, the jewelry, the cars, the designer clothes. From visiting other cities to making public appearances, rappers are going to have to abandon the idea that your homeboy is your security. Having trained professional security is not only going to increase the security of yourself, but the safety of the general public as well. The harsh reality is, a month or two from now, another professional rapper is going to be murdered in cold blood, and the same old song is going to be sung. The question is, how much more worse can it get? I go by the name of Nugs. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button for more dope hip-hop content. And remember, I'm not telling you to agree with me. I'm just telling you to peep the perspective.
The Black KKK is killing more blacks than the original KKK. It's locking up more blacks than the original KKK. This new KKK, this Black KKK, they're deadly. There's no love amongst the Black KKK. They come from the ghetto. They have a ghetto mentality. They don't have no love amongst each other. They lie to each other. They steal from each other. They are the perfect image of the KKK. They're just black. They're gang members. They're dope dealers. They're abusers. They destroy their own. The KKK couldn't have did, the original KKK couldn't have did a better job than the Black KKK.
The rap game is in a wild spot right now, and artists been getting locked up left and right. Today, we're breaking down what's going on with some of the hottest rappers who are sitting in jail right now. Let's get straight to it. K-Flock barely started dropping music in 2020, but he quickly became one of the hottest new rappers in the Bronx drill scene. At first, he was just a hype man for his homies Dougie B and B-Love, but when Flock started rapping, people went crazy. He started racking up millions of views in no time with tracks like Is You Ready and Being Honest. But in December 2021, he got tied up in a situation that might have him in prison for life. On December 16th, Flock walked by a barbershop when a dude named Oscar Hernandez stepped out of the shop and followed him. And that's when Flock allegedly pulled out his burner and killed him. Flock got hit with first-degree murder and has been in jail ever since. Back in March, he gave his fans some good news when he posted a photo of himself on IG and captioned it, "All is good. Don't believe the blogs or the internet. Everything trendy. Forever DOA." Flock didn't get released on bond like some fans thought would happen, but the news broke that he hired a famous lawyer named Jeffrey Lichman. Lichman has defended other rappers like The Game and Fat Joe, and he even defended El Chapo in court. He says he's ready to fight to the death for K-Flock, and apparently, he thinks they have a good chance of beating the case and trial. Hopefully, Flock gets his situation handled fast and can get back to the music. If he comes out soon and starts dropping hits again, he could go right back to the top of the drill scene. But if the trial drags on for years, his fans might end up moving on by the time he gets released. Hot Boy is a rapper from Florida known for tracks like Switcheroo and Life of a Dog. But he's even more famous for his violent beef against Glock 9 and his AFNF crew. Hot Boy and Glock 9 was cool back in the day, but now they both facing decades in prison after allegedly turning Orlando into a war zone. Both sides lost people to the beat, and Glock 9 almost got killed in 2020 when a shooter pulled up on them in a mall parking lot. The violence got so bad that the police created a special RICO investigation called Operation X-Force to bring down Hot Boy, his 438 crew, Glock 9, and AFNF. The cops found out the gangs were smuggling guns, drugs, and money into the city, and over the course of 9 months, they gathered enough evidence to bring them down. 34 members of 438 and AFNF got booked on RICO charges, including Hot Boy and Glock 9. Hot Boy was originally let out on bond, but it was revoked after he was caught with a gun. His lawyer was able to get the gun charge dropped, but Hot Boy is still facing 32 years in prison if he's convicted. He told fans he'd be home soon, but the judge probably won't give him another chance to post bond. Glock 9 has already been sentenced to 7 years for identity theft and a weapons charge. He stole someone's identity and used it to get a COVID PPP loan that was worth $10K, but it didn't take long for the cops to trace it back to him. 7 years ain't too bad, but Glock 9 could end up doing more than that. He's still facing a second-degree murder and racketeering charge, but he could have way more time added onto his sentence if he's found guilty. Glock 9 and Hot Boy was both popping off in the rap game before they started beefing, but they threw it all away over street beef, and now it could be decades before they get out. YNW Melly started rapping in 2015 and founded the YNW crew with his homies Juvie, Sack Chaser, and Portland a year later. He started popping off with tracks like Virtual and Murder on My Mind. But right after he blew up, Melly allegedly murdered Juvie and Sack Chaser, and he's been in jail since 2019. In October 2018, Portland dropped off Juvie and Sack Chaser at a hospital and claimed they got shot in a drive-by. The situation was quiet for a few months, but when police started investigating, they realized that Portland's story didn't line up with the evidence. The police believe Melly and Portland set the scene up to look like a drive-by, but Melly was the one who actually pulled the trigger. Melly never got the option to post bond, and the 3 years he spent behind bars have been rough. Back in 2020, he lost recreation and visiting rights and had to spend time in solitary confinement. Then in August, Melly's lawyer requested that the jail let him out to get dental care. Melly has permanent grills installed that need a lot of upkeep. Since he's been in jail, he can't take care of them. According to his lawyer, Melly has an abscess in his lower jaw that is creating extreme pain and chronic infection. But the judge wasn't trying to hear it, and he denied the request. Back in April, Melly and his lawyer were accused of planning a jailbreak. According to the sheriff's office, Melly and another dude planned on escaping by having his lawyer sneak in 2 handcuff keys. The jail found out, and when they searched the other dude's cell, they found a 6-inch shank, couple of razor blades, 2 lighters, plus some pills. Melly could catch more charges for the alleged escape plan, but he's already facing life in prison. The prosecution has all kinds of evidence to bring against him, and they allegedly even have tags proving that Melly authorized a hit on his own mom. The trial's supposed to begin later this year, so tap in for updates, because this situation could get wild. Who Shiesty came into the game back in 2019 and went viral from the jump. In 2020, he signed the Gucci's 1017 label, then popped off like crazy with the track Back in Blood with Lil Durk. Shiesty was becoming one of the hottest new rappers in the game, but then he got arrested for a shooting that went down in Florida. According to the prosecution, Shiesty linked up with some dudes to buy codeine, weed, and sneakers, but the deal went sour and Shiesty ended up shooting one of them before smashing off. The dude he shot survived, but the cops linked Shiesty to the crime immediately because he dropped a Louis V bag with $40K in cash on the ground when he fled the scene. Police matched the serial numbers of $100 bills Shiesty was flexing on Instagram to the cash left on the scene. He was originally facing 8 years, but in April, a judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison. When the news broke, Shiesty shouted out his fans and wrote, "The biggest. I just want to thank all my loved ones, supporters, and fans for holding me down during these hard times. I wish I could be coming home to y'all today, but this could have been way worse. I will be back sooner than y'all think." Shiesty might get out after just serving 3.5 years if he stays out the way and doesn't cause any issues in jail. And with Gucci backing him up, he could jump right back in the game and start popping again. Lil Reese is a legend in the Chicago drill scene and was featured on Chief Keef's mainstream hit, Don't Like, back in 2012. He's been dropping music for over a decade, and he's tight with Lil Durk too. But Reese never really left the streets behind, and in May, he got hit with assault charges in Texas. He was booked in Harris County Jail on a charge of aggravated assault of a family member and denied bond. But then 5 days later, he got booked again on the same charge, and his bond was set at $60K. As of today, Reese ain't paid the bond and is still sitting in jail. It's not clear how everything went down, but rumors say he beat up one of his family members because they were stealing from him. That hasn't been confirmed yet though, and Reese hasn't said anything about the case. The cold part about the situation is that none of Reese's homies have bailed him out, but maybe there's more going on behind the scenes that nobody knows about. So y'all stay posted for updates, because more details could come out any day. Casanova is a New York rapper known for tracks like 2 AM, Whoa, and Down. He had a wild come up in Brooklyn, and back in the day, he even linked up with A$AP Rocky on Rikers Island. Fans thought he left the streets behind after he started buzzing in the rap game. Rap game. But in December 2020, he got hit with a RICO charge for allegedly being a high-ranked member of the untouchable Gorilla Stone Nation gang. 17 other alleged members got booked too, and the U.S. attorney said, as alleged in the indictment, members of Gorilla Stone committed terrible acts of violence, trafficked in narcotics, and even engaged in brazen fraud by exploiting benefits programs meant to provide assistance in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Back in May, Casanova pleaded guilty to his racketeering and drug charges, and now he's facing up to 60 years in prison. He's scheduled for sentencing on December 6th, and his lawyer plans on getting him out as soon as possible. He said, "We will be submitting comprehensive sentencing memoranda in which we will endeavor to demonstrate to the court that Mr. Senior is a good man, a good father, and husband, and someone the court can feel confident will not reoffend." Hopefully, the judge takes it easy and doesn't throw the book at Casanova. He's facing a minimum of 5 years in prison, and if he keeps his head down and stays out of trouble, he could be out even sooner. But if the judge decides to make an example out of him, Cass might spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Our enemy is in the house. The fox is in the hen house, but the fox has always now been in the hen house. Ghetto blacks are the fox in the hen house of the black community. Ghetto blacks, ghetto mentality, hood blacks, ratchet blacks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The NIGGAs. Really, the NIGGERSs. That's what they really are. Because that's what they represent. They represent a Jim Crow criminal image. You know what I mean? They represent the violent black, who is no different from the violent slaver, who is no different from the KKK, who is no different because they oppress their own communities. They terrorize their own communities. They kill their own, then they come out and say Black Lives Matter. Hypocritical tongues. They come out here and say Black Lives Matter, but they set their own baby daddies up to get murdered or put in prison. They cheat on them. Men cheat on the women with the men and the women, and the women cheat on the men with the men and the women. The morality of the black community is in the gutter because we see that the black community has been raised with one parent, and the majority of them are mothers. Mothers who don't take accountability for the monsters they raise and the stuff they put into these monsters. Too many single moms in the black community are creating felons because they're having too many babies by Pookies and Ray Rays. They're having sex with the 20% of men that they should not even be considering bringing life into this world with. But they're having babies by the criminal element of our community. Multiples of babies. Raising these children. They can't raise the boys to be men because most of the boys go to prison. The American prison is housed by the single mom's child. Now, I hear y'all are going to say, well, what about the men? The men left. Y'all kicking these men out. 80% of the marriages in America are being filed by the woman because she says she's not happy or he's not making enough money. Well, come on now. Only 1% of the male population is doing really, really well. Well, 10% if you want to look at a lower, less than $1 million a year. Okay? But really 90% of the guys make between $50,000 to $70,000 a year, and women, y'all today don't want that. Y'all want the millionaires, so y'all are destroying your families now for dreams, because only 1% of the population of males are basically millionaires or multimillionaires. Now, I believe 10% are in that 100,000, six figures and up, something like that. But majority don't make that money, those six figures. They make, mid to high five figures. And y'all are throwing these men away. So this is what's being created. And then y'all are chasing money. So your morals don't mind him being a gangbanger or a drug dealer or a thug if he's making money. And then you go and give your goods to him and create baby kids. And then this is what we have. These murderous kids with no love, with no conscience, with no hope, with no dignity, with no respect. And then y'all expect to find men in that? Y'all saying it ain't nowhere the men at. Y'all raising these monsters because y'all got monster mentalities. Y'all raising a masculine energy. Yeah, I'm talking about the ladies right now, but you guys, I'm gonna get on y'all too. But this is what we're going. This is where we're at. This is why the black community is the new KKK, the Black KKK. Look at these hood moms. Look at these hood dads. Look at the way they think. These ain't black folks. These are Jim Crow niggas. That's what they are. And we have to recognize it. There's more NIGGAs, aka NIGGERs, in America than black folks, than brothers and sisters. Most of our people are raised in the ghetto now and have a ghetto mentality. And there's no love in the ghetto. Guess what's in the ghetto? Crabs. Crabs in the barrel that pull each other down. And if you just happen to go into the ghetto and you're not from the ghetto, and you jump in there, you think it's cool, but you got ambitions, and the ghetto don't understand that because they was raised to hate each other and bring each other down, and you go in there, guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to get pulled down in the ghetto mentality, the ghetto immorality, the ghetto slum. It's really funny because I heard the term trailer trash. This person told me trailer trash, but if there's trailer trash, then there got to be ghetto trash. And there's a lot of ghetto trash out there because their mind is ghetto. Their heart is ghetto. And it's hood ghetto. Destructive. I ain't talking about brother and sister they love. I'm talking about brother and sister they hate. This is why we got these monsters out here like J. Prince Jr., who can walk around with a smile on his face when his death is right around the corner. Death don't take long to follow people like him. See, because they use death, so death is going to use them. It's like I told those folks when they were talking about, what's his name? Kevin Samuels, that brother with the podcast, and spoke about some things. He was wrong about some things. He was right about some things. But when he died, there was a whole bunch of African American black women very happy about his death, not realizing what they just did to their own self spiritually. They welcomed death into their life. When you're happy that somebody died, do you know what type of reaping and sowing that puts into your spiritual life and your spiritual path? All those women that was happy about that, Not putting nothing on Vivica Fox, but watch what happens to Vivica Fox in the near future with her health, with all this stuff about her. Watch. Just watch. It's coming for her. But before death comes for her, it's gonna do something to her, to show her. Hopefully it humbles her, but it's coming for Vivica. So all I know is that we're dealing with the Black KKK and the black community, intra-racism. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. My cousins used to call me their light-skinned cousin when I was just a cousin. Why would they have to put the adjective on there? Because there's an intra-racism thing going on. How blacks hate each other. How they don't want to see each other do good. Especially hood blacks. Hood blacks, money is everything. Money is everything. And most people in the world settle out for money, but I've never seen money-hungry leeches like the black community. Hood blacks. I done heard blacks from the hood tell me it don't matter if a person sell out their history and ancestors or whatever, long as they get paid.
Message.
I heard that from plenty. Talking about the history, talking about the loyalty and ancestors, and not ancestor worship, ancestor honor, because I worship no man, no human being. I worship the kingdom of third heaven, which is under the leadership of Yahweh through his son Yeshua, aka Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, the Comforter. That's where I put my worship. But I honor my ancestors, just like I honor my forefathers in the Bible. You know, Old Testament, New Testament, I honor them because they had a purpose and a role. But I don't worship them, you know. But this new KKK, this Black KKK, it's niggas. It's N-I-G-G-A's or N-I-G-E. It's really N-I-G-G-E-R-S, because that's what it really is. They just want to take it and make it with the A so they can think it's cool. But they really look stupid because this hood mentality is a disgrace. A disgrace to American black history. The black image today of the black woman being Jezebel, being a Benedict Arnold, and the black man being the same, and over-emotional man who don't have discipline and order because he was raised in a matriarchy. There are not many brothers and sisters left in America. Not many. Not many brothers and sisters. Not the image of the 60s. The image of black America today is criminal and immoral. Look at the men. Look how they talk. Look how irrational they are.
YFN Lucci and Young Thug turned Atlanta into a war zone during their deadly beef, and now both sides are facing decades in prison after getting hit with RICO charges. A lot has gone down since everyone got locked up, so today we're breaking down everything going on behind the scenes. Let's get right to it. Last year, YFN Lucci got booked on a murder charge after allegedly sliding into his ops hood and getting his own homie killed. The cops think he was just the driver, but they still hit him with charges for murder, assault, and gang activity. Then a few months later, he suffered another loss when he and his crew got hit with a massive RICO indictment. The YFN collective going down shocked Atlanta. But then the situation got even crazier when Thug, Gunna, and their YSL crew also caught a RICO case. After Thug and Gunna got booked earlier this year, fans thought they'd at least be able to bail out while they fought the case. But the judge has already denied Thug bail 3 times, and he claims that if he lets Thug out, it could lead to more people getting killed.
The 2 major concerns that this court has is danger to persons and threats to intimidate other witnesses and obstruct the administration of justice. For those reasons in the aggregate, I'm going to deny bond at this time.
Thug's lawyer, Brian Steele, told the judge that they would set up an incredibly expensive house arrest plan where they would monitor all of Thug's communication and have dozens of off-duty cops watching them. Steele was trying to get a setup like Youngboy had in Utah while he was fighting his Fed case. According to prosecutors, the state's witnesses are already being threatened with serious violence and death. And they're afraid that Thug will kill them and their families if he finds out who they are. They also brought up an alleged text that Thug sent to some YSL members in 2015 that said, anybody goes into a courtroom and tells the God honest truth, they'll be f***ing killed.
The group chat that from 2015 starting, anybody goes into a courtroom and tells the God honest truth, they'll be f***ing killed, pardon me for the language. And this threat is still being talked about.
The case is looking tough for Thug to beat, but his legal team just made headlines by trying to score a huge win. One of the biggest pieces of evidence against Thug is that he allegedly rented the car using the drive-by from Lucci's homie Big Nut back in 2015. But now his lawyers say the state had no right to get his name from the rental agency because he wasn't under indictment when they got the evidence. If they can get that evidence thrown out, Thug's chances of beating the case will go way up. Right now, it's too early to tell what'll happen, but stay tuned for updates on that. Gunn has been denied bail 3 times too. Prosecutors told the judge he was also going to intimidate witnesses if they let him out. But Gunna's legal team just filed a 4th motion for bond and said that the state has failed to give any proof that he would do anything to witnesses. Even though there's no evidence against him, the judge decided to keep him locked up anyway. Thug and Gunna are both being kept in total lockdown like they're convicted serial killers. Brian Steele said that Thug's conditions are inhumane and that he's being kept in a room with no windows. All he has is a bed and toilet, plus an overhead light that stays on 24/7. Gunna's situation ain't no better. He wrote a message to fans on IG that said, 22 and 2, just a bed and a shower. No windows, just walls. Can't see or talk to anyone. Living in solitary confinement when you haven't even been convicted already makes a bad situation worse. And now, an 18-year-old named Cortavius Mender is facing 23 counts of terroristic threats after he threatened to kill the Fulton County Sheriff and his wife if they didn't let Thug out. The sheriff said that after they booked Cortavius, even more threats have been coming in.
And to date, we are continuing to receive threats. Have as many as 4 or 5 more to date that are all social media based.
It's not clear if he's actually associated with YSL, but he damn near threw his life away over a few social media posts. The YSL crew took another hit in October when Jaden Myrick, aka Set Trip, or J-Man, was convicted of robbery and murder. J-Man is caught up in a RICO too, But his conviction comes from a separate case where he allegedly robbed and killed a dude back in 2018. On July 7th, 2018, a man named Christian Broder and 3 other people were waiting for their Uber outside of a wedding venue. J-Man and his homie saw him and decided to hit an easy lick. So they walked up and demanded their phones, wallets, and everything else at gunpoint. Broder and the others handed everything over. But then, Broder followed J-Man down the street and asked for his license back. And that's when J-Man pulled his burner and shot him in the stomach. Broder was just a married man with kids attending a wedding, but he was tragically killed over nothing. According to J-Man, he was recruited by gang members when he was just 9 years old. He got arrested for robbery at 14 and was sentenced to 15 years. But the judge let him out because they thought sending him to prison would lead him down the wrong path as a career criminal. But just a few months after the judge decided to give J-Man another chance, Christian Broder was dead. Now, J-Man is serving life without parole, plus 3 consecutive life sentences and another 5 years. And that's not even counting what he'll get if he's convicted in the RICO case. Plus, there's a good chance that any evidence the prosecutors used against him in the murder trial could be brought into the RICO case too. J-Man told the court that he don't just rep YSL, but he's also affiliated with 9 Trey and Lil Baby's 4PF crew. Rumors have already been flying that 4PF could be the next crew that gets hit with a RICO. And J-Man's testimony could end up sending a lot of dudes to prison. Even if nobody else with YSL or 4PF was involved with the murder, the prosecutors can try and prove that J-Man killed Broder in furtherance of the gangs and use that to bring everyone down. On top of that, J-Man is also allegedly one of the dudes who stabbed YFN Lucci in jail. Back in February, Lucci claimed there was a bag on his head and that someone shanked him. J-Man was allegedly involved, and 2 other YSL affiliates named Big Briss and Antonio Sumlin allegedly asked Thug for permission to kill Lucci in jail. Lucci originally got out on bond back in 2021, but he violated it and got locked up again. His lawyer tried to get him out after he got stabbed, but right now, Lucci's still sitting behind bars. And to make it even worse, his girlfriend Regina Carter just broke up with him. Back in May, Wack 100 accused Lucci of snitching on Thug to get a lighter sentence. According to him, since Lucci wasn't named in the YSL RICO as a defendant, he's working with the cops against him. Lucci's lawyer says he hasn't even been offered a plea deal and that they're going to trial to prove he's innocent. Lucci ain't the only dude being accused of snitching though. Back in June, rumors started flying that Thug's own homie, Yak Gotti, was working with the police. It started when paperwork came out showing that Gotti told the cops in 2018 that he gave a rifle to a YSL affiliate named Lil Duke. Gotti pleaded guilty to the weapons charges back then, and he hopped on social media to squash the snitching rumors. He wrote, 2015, my brother never did a day in jail because I claimed my shit. I did 4 years fed with no tears. Gotti was also denied bond in the RICO case after he got caught using an illegal cell phone in jail.
I do believe that Mr. Kendrick is a threat to witnesses and likely to commit other crimes and risk of flight. For those reasons, I'm going to deny bond at this point in time.
According to prosecutors, Gotti made calls to the outside and was telling people to get rid of a bunch of burner phones, but the cops got to them before they were destroyed. Then in October, Gotti's mom told Rolling Stone that someone tried to stab him in jail. She said, "My son doesn't deserve to be attacked in jail. No one does." Gotti got into a fight with the dude who allegedly tried to stab him, and his mom said he beat that boy's ass. Gotti and Duke are allegedly a big part of why YSL and YFN are beefing in the first place. The situation started going downhill back in 2015 after Lucci's homie, Donovan Thomas, aka Big Nut, was shot and killed. For years, nobody knew who was behind the hit, but now 5 YSL members have been charged with the murder, and Thug is accused of renting the car they used in the drive-by. Big Nut's murder set off a huge crime wave in Atlanta, and the cops say his death caused 4 more murders and over 30 other crimes. Lucci and Thug were cool back in the day and had a lot of the same homies in the industry like Rich Homie Quan, but Big Nut's death sparked a war that led to both sides getting hit with massive charges. Prosecutors using Thug, Gunna, and Lucci's lyrics against them has caused a lot of controversy. This ain't the first time it's happened though. Boosie, Bobby Shmurda, Draco the Ruler, and 6ix9ine's lyrics have all been used against them, but now artists are fighting back to protect their free speech. Jay-Z and other big names supported a bill in New York called Rap Music on Trial, which would limit lyrics used in the courtroom. But the Fulton County DA obviously don't care about what's going on in New York. She said, "I think if you decide to admit your crimes over a beat, I'm gonna use it." Prosecutors have listed a lot of Thug's lyrics in the case, and in June, they brought up his track Bad Boy with Juice WRLD and accused him of shooting at YFN Lucci's mom. Back in 2016, Lucci's mom's house got shot up twice in 1 week. The first time, Lucci was out of town and nobody got hit, but a week later, someone drove by and let off shots again. Lucci's mom and her friend both got hit in the leg but weren't seriously injured, and now Thug's getting tied to it through his lyrics. On Bad Boy, Thug said, "I shot at his mommy, now he no longer mention me. You say you want smoke, and I've been coming down the chimney. You gotta barbecue your I'm so fried and they crispy. I had on Margellas when I shot at the act like you want war, and they gonna smoke you like a blunt." If the prosecutors don't have any evidence against him besides the lyrics, there's probably no way they'll get a conviction for shooting Lucci's mom. But it's just one more thing that Thug and his team have to deal with. Back in June, Thug had a pre-recorded message play at Hot 97 Summer Jam. He asked fans to support the Protect Black Art petition, which asked federal and state lawmakers to limit the use of lyrics in court. Unfortunately, the YSL case is set to go to trial in January 2023, so it's unlikely they'll be able to get anything done about the lyrics before then. Thug, Lucci, and everyone else is facing serious time, and RICO charges are almost impossible to beat. But with cases like this, anything can happen. You never know when a piece of new evidence will break, so tap in for updates while the story develops.
You see how so many black men go to prison? Uncontrolled emotions. Somebody say something, mama, and they say, no, you in prison for 20 years because somebody said something about your mama and you should have walked away. You know what I mean? It's like in the movie Patrick Swayze when Roadhouse, when the dude says, well, what if somebody say my mama is this? And he says, well, is your mama that? You know what I'm saying? So it's the uncontrolled behavior of the black community or mentality or emotions that got most of us looking like criminals. And black people, the minority of the black folks in America, we just sit back. I mean, it's just crazy. Somebody got to speak out. The problem is not white folks. They were the problem, you know, and they still the problem in some ways. They don't really want to examine themselves, but then you got black folks who don't really want to examine themselves either. Nobody want to examine their true image, their spiritual image. So you got all this mess going on and all these monsters being created. But the problem is really the black community. That's where the monsters are. These monsters out here that, like I just showed you in all these videos, were created by Frankensteins. Okay? Dr. Frankenstein. And usually Dr. Frankenstein is inside the household. Inside their own household. So once we start recognizing that the new KKK is black folks, the new KKK is a hood mentality, the get it by any means mentality, degrade your woman mentality, degrade your man mentality. As long as we keep that going, this is going to continue. And unfortunately, it's going to continue because, honestly, the Black KKK is so far gone that it ain't going to turn around. Majority of the blacks in America are Black KKK. If they're not killing somebody, like really doing it with their own hands, they're killing them. They're killing each other with their mouth. They're killing each other with the way they describe each other with their mouth. They're killing each other literally by setting each other up, lying on each other. You know how many black men are sitting up in prison and in jail because a black woman got mad and lied on them? And knowing that it's easy to get a black man locked up, these black women are throwing black men away like garbage, like trash, and just handing them over to the prison system. You never seen that historically with blacks ever. Because those black women, during slavery and after slavery saw how brutal that really was. They saw black men hanging. They saw black men with their testicles cut off. They saw black men's back ripped open, and they saw spines, because that's how much the flesh was ripped off. They saw the struggle of what black men were doing. They saw how black men wanted to fight for their honor, but he's a property. She's a property. They don't have an army or somebody that's going to come save them. They don't have a law that says you can't do this, so it stops the slave owner, it stops the slave trade. They just were property. And the black women blame him for all this. She still blame him to this day when they don't really study history in chronological order. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's not even really about her. It's just that she made this decision in the 50s and the 60s, and now she wants to blame the black man. But she got to realize that everybody's being held to their own decision when it comes to the kingdom of heaven. And for these black males out here who ran away from their families for whatever reason, sometimes you got to go. I get it. Because the black community is hell on each other. And poor choices are being made by the gatekeepers of the love box, the vagina. Because a lot of you guys wouldn't even have babies if it wasn't for these women opening their love box for you. So I'm reaching out, asking the ladies, make better decisions with your sex box. Don't let everybody in it. If he's a thug, he's a criminal, it doesn't matter if you like the bad boy image, because look at the bad boy results. And you got a high percentage of women who chose the bad boys, and look at their results, ladies. Look at what they have at 35 plus years old, 40 plus years old, 45 plus years old, 50 plus years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, single, Social Security, no pension, maybe a pension, no protection, depending completely on the government. Look at these situations. Look at these consequences of destroying the traditional family and embracing the matriarchy, which is a devil's thing. It's Lucifer's thing because it's out of order. And that's the black community. Out of order. The new KKK. The Black KKK. The murderous murderer of all murderers historically in America. Black America. Who's killing Black America? Black America. Who's hating Black America? Black America. Or Israel America, because that's what they say we are, right? And we probably are, because we don't know our ancient history. But hey, I say both. Black America, Israel America, Jew America, Israelite America, whatever you want to call it, you're lost. Y'all fight amongst each other. You don't see Hispanic women who are dating or married to white men making swirling videos to destroy the image of the Mexican man or Latino man, right? You don't see white women who are with black men making videos disparaging the white man. But you do see black women who hate the black man, married to the white man, making disparaging videos about black men. They look weak as hell. They look weak. Even the women that date outside their race look at these black women like they're pitiful, and they are pitiful. They don't think they're pitiful because they walk in pride, vanity, and arrogance and everything Lucifer has. That is an image of Lucifer. But we live in a fallen world, and most people on this earth walks with a Lucifer image. Even church folks, mainly church folks, because the world's supposed to walk in Lucifer's image. They're lost. But then Yeshua says, few find the road that's straight and narrow. He's talking to the Christian church. He ain't talking to the other religions that don't look at Jesus as the Son of God. He's talking to Christians. Because most Christians are not really saved. They're not. They don't like to hear it, but they're not. That's why Yeshua says few find the road to heaven. And that's why he even says he's going to tell most of them, I don't know you, workers of iniquity. But The new KKK, the Black KKK, is the black community. And that's what we have. This is the product. Good is bad, bad is good. The black community hates itself. And it always will hate itself until it figures out that you got to go back to Yahweh, you got to go back to holiness, and you got to go back to traditional family in order. Our women are out of pocket. This is why today in 2022, their children and their children's children are the new KKK, the Black KKK, the killers of their own kind, the disgraces of our history. This generation, the baby boomer generation, is they're horrible. They did all this. They're the weak link in the generations of blacks that ever been in America. Because after the baby boomer generation, every generation of black has been weaker and weaker and weaker. It's just got worse. But it is what it is. The hood black folks, the hip hop, the ghetto mind, the depraved mindset, the criminal mentality, the whore image, the low value, the low self-esteem image, that's a nigger image. That's the KKK. That's the Black KKK. The destroyers of their own kind. I love y'all. I'm out.
We're gonna rip it and roll, we're gonna rip it and roll, we're gonna get a hit, baby, ain't gonna lose control. We're gonna roll, we're gonna rip it and roll, we're gonna rip it and roll, we're gonna get a hit, baby, ain't gonna lose control. Yeah. You see that kickback? Yeah, homie, it came on line. We got that pay, man, we got that pay. Now nigga looking like sunshine. Mr. Clean on the nigga cause it's so drink time. Try to sheen on the nigga cause I'm losing my mind. I'm on the team with my nigga for the funk of these spots. I'm gonna beam on the system while I was closing these lines. But a nigga ready like Freddy. Gonna dice him up like spicy spaghetti. Kick him in the face, we'll watch him carry. We hot like Nelly. They coming like jelly, we coming like better. These suckers soft, but we good felly. The ship about to take, but we headed to the telly. This coca, homie, is ready. We gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get a hit, baby, and lose control. We gonna roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get a hit, baby, ain't gonna lose control. Yeah, I get it, good God, I get it. Hold up, nigga, stop wasting time. Yo, a nigga with it, a brother with it, black fist in the air, please stay in line. We gonna troop on these ghosts like some boots. Leave a print from the Black Panther blue. Twist on your corner in the cool. Now here's the middle finger for poison in my room. We about to get footloose, man. Band of the hand, I knuckle up right where you stand. KKK, my government treason. Black folk, ISIS, American heathen. Captain is Steven, Ali, Bobby being chasing in an agonize, tearing us to pieces. If we should unite into one strong nation, man, I'm losing patience. The time I'm gonna face it. We gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get a hit, baby, ain't gonna lose control. We gonna roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get a hit, baby, ain't gonna lose control. Yeah. I seen it, good God, I seen it. I looked up and seen it on the news. And they say they confess it's the war on drugs was a black man round up news. Another way for us to be some prison tools. Free slaves, another caste system fools. Better understand this is what it do. Keep a nigga dumbfounded and afraid of confusion. But now these niggas simping like they shipping. Claiming the racist system that's straight up killing. Penitentiary, black family division, self-hate and hate, saturate sense of him, with this destroying. Death is still loving him, his history ain't reclaiming his past and descent. Jim Crow controlling him, Willie Lynch holding him, Sambo and Mammy in the image of niggas again. We gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get ahead of baby, ain't gonna lose control, we gonna roll. We gonna rip it and roll, we gonna rip it and roll, we gonna get ahead of baby, ain't gonna lose control, yeah, yeah, yeah. Y'all gotta stop. All that monkeying around. You know you ain't monkeys, right? Nah, but you acting like some monkeys.